General Hospital spoilers reveal that Rocco had only expected a tedious afternoon when he arrived at General Hospital, to sign his paperwork and receive the uniform for his community service hours, a consequence he intended to fulfill quietly and without drawing attention. Yet the moment GH chose to place him inside the hospital rather than sending him to a park shelter or administrative office signaled something far more deliberate. Soap operas rarely waste screen time on details without purpose. If Rocco was being shown pulling on hospital scrubs and stepping into the maze of corridors as part of his punishment, there had to be a reason buried beneath the surface. Something the writers were preparing to detonate at exactly the right moment. And Rocco, unaware of the narrative weight settling on his shoulders, wandered deeper into the hospital, doing what he was told while fate guided him toward a secret he was never meant to hear. Willow had been performing grief with flawless precision, pacing outside Drew's room with red eyes she could summon on command, speaking softly to nurses about hope and heartbreak, creating the perfect portrait of a devastated wife. But the moment the hallway emptied and she slipped inside Drew's room, the mask fell in silence, so sharp it felt like a blade. She believed she was alone with an unconscious man who could neither move nor speak. A man trapped inside a body that no longer responded, a man she had tried to destroy more than once. She had no reason to whisper. The room felt like a confession booth designed for her triumph. And that was the moment Rocco found himself inches from the door, clutching a clipboard he was supposed to deliver, not realizing that the quiet murmur drifting into the hallway was about to crack open his understanding of the adults around him. Willow's voice, stripped of pretense, became sharp and amused as she leaned over Drew, telling him he had ruined her life and now he was finally getting what he deserved. She mocked the 2 bullets she had put into him once before, mocked how he never saw her coming, mocked the fact that she'd walked away clean each time. Then she mentioned the stroke, how easy it had been to push him past the edge once more, how conveniently the syringe with the sedative had vanished after she discarded it. She said it all as if Drew were nothing more than a broken object, and she smiled with satisfaction because she believed he would never be able to expose her. Rocco froze. His heart stopped for a moment, so complete he thought it might never start again. He didn't intend to listen. He had only paused because he wasn't sure which room number he was supposed to deliver the person's. Supplies to... But the words slithered into his ears like poison. I'll get away with this, just like I did before. The hallway suddenly felt too tight, too suffocating, as if the building itself knew he now carried something dangerous inside him. His hands trembled the clipboard, nearly slipping from his fingers as he moved back instinctively, terrified that Willow would emerge and realize he had overheard everything. In that instant, Rocco was no longer just a teenager serving community hours. He had become the unwilling holder of a secret capable of tearing apart an entire family and reshaping the power dynamics of Port Charles. The shock did not fade. It deepened with every breath. He replayed Willow's words, each one striking harder than the last. Because it wasn't simply wrongdoing he had stumbled upon, it was cold, calculated malice. She hadn't sounded desperate or panicked. She sounded victorious, as if hurting Drew had been a step toward reclaiming something she believed she'd lost. And if she had truly shot him twice before, if she had caused the stroke that nearly killed him, then everyone who trusted her was standing next to a wolf disguised as a grieving widow. Rocco's mind spun as he tried to comprehend the magnitude of the truth now sitting on his shoulders. He thought of Willow's gentle tone when speaking to others, her sympathetic expressions, the way adults praised her resilience. None of it matched the person he just heard. He felt betrayed, confused, terrified, because exposing the truth meant risking Willow discovering he knew it. Keeping it secret meant watching an innocent man suffer and possibly die. The weight of the moment pressed on him until his breath came shallow and uneven. He knew the writers hadn't placed him in GH by accident. The entire reason he was serving community hours in this exact building was so he would be standing here at this door at this moment in time, and yet knowing that did nothing to steady him. He felt swallowed by the enormity of what he'd uncovered, torn between the instinct to run and the responsibility to act. The hospital humming around him with distant alarms and soft voices suddenly felt predatory, as if every shadow might hide Willow watching him, waiting to see whether her secret had been heard. Rocco realized then that he was no longer simply a kid finishing his punishment. He had stepped into the heart of a Cisse story that could shatter lives. The truth had found him, and now the danger that followed it was closing in fast. Rocco left Drew's doorway in a daze, the shocking truth echoing in his skull like a wound he couldn't stop touching. The words Willow had whispered, those cold, triumphant confessions, and the chilling satisfaction in her voice followed him down every hallway of General Hospital, as if the building itself were repeating them back to him. He tried to breathe through the panic, but each breath only revealed something worse. Because the more he replayed her words, the more he realized that Drew was not the end of her plans. Hidden between the lines of her monologue had been hints, names, grudges, unresolved fury that Rocco could not ignore. She had not only blamed Drew for ruining her life, she had said others would pay too. that closing his mouth forever was only the beginning of restoring what she believed belonged to her. And she had spoken two names with a venom that made Rocco's stomach twist: Michael and Alexis. At first, he wasn't even sure he had heard correctly, but the tone Willow used had been unmistakable resentment sharpened into intent. If she had already shot Drew twice in the past and caused his latest collapse with a syringe, then imagining her turning toward Michael and Alexis with the same ruthless resolve was no longer far-fetched. It was inevitable. The enormity of it crushed him, and the hallway blurred as fear rushed through his body. He wasn't supposed to know any of this. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near danger. He was just a kid completing community service hours, and yet fate had dropped him directly into the path of a predator wearing the skin of a grieving wife. Worse, Willow still believed no one had seen through her act. That illusion made her bold. It made her reckless. And now that Drew was silenced, she clearly thought she had room to continue her plans unchecked. Rocco remembered her words about ensuring everyone paid in the end, and something inside him snapped to attention. Michael had been kind to him. Alexis had always encouraged him to grow, even when he stumbled. The idea that Willow might target them next, might quietly remove them the way she had tried to remove Drew, made his chest tighten with dread. He knew he couldn't simply walk away from this, even though every instinct screamed at him to pretend he had heard nothing. But pretending wouldn't save anyone, and the truth was as heavy and alive as a creature perched on his shoulders, refusing to be shaken off. Yet, the terrifying part wasn't just knowing Willow was capable of murder. It was knowing she might already suspect. Something had gone wrong. She was meticulous, calculating, observant. If she realized someone had been near the door, if she replayed her own steps and sensed even a whisper of danger, she might act even faster, and Rocco could be next. The thought made his pulse hammer painfully beneath his skin. But another thought rose beneath it. Who could he turn to? Who would believe him? Who would protect him from Willow if she discovered the truth? For a long moment, he stood frozen near the elevator, unable to decide. Telling the wrong person could destroy him. Keeping silent could kill the people he cared about. And then two names surfaced, the same names that had risen unshaken throughout his entire life whenever danger threatened Sonny and Laura. Sonny, who never let a threat to his family go unanswered. Laura, who had guided Port Charles through every crisis. Who looked at every child as if their life mattered beyond measure. They were the only ones who could stand against someone as manipulative and unpredictable as Willow. The only ones who understood how darkness hid behind soft voices and sympathetic smiles. Rocco imagined walking up to Sonny, trying to explain what he'd overheard. The fear thick in his throat, but the truth ready to burst. He imagined Laura steady and calm, listening without judgment and piecing together the danger faster than anyone else. He felt the faintest flicker of relief. They would believe him. They would act. They would keep him safe while stopping Willow before she struck again. But relief came with fear too, because if Willow was planning something for Michael, Sonny was already in her way. And if Willow resented Alexis, Laura's involvement might paint a target on her back as well. He understood now with rising terror that revealing the truth would trigger a war Willow thought she had already won. And once Willow realized her secrets were unraveling, she would not hesitate to finish what she started. Rocco's breath shook as he imagined Michael collapsing, the way Drew had imagined Alexis cornered in some dim corridor. Imagined Willow watching with that same cold satisfaction she had shown beside Drew's hospital bed. His panic hardened into something sharper resolve. He couldn't let that happen. Not when he could stop it. Not when he was the only one who knew the full extent of her plans. The elevator doors slid open, and a gust of cold air brushed against his face like a warning. Rocco stepped inside, clutching the terrible truth close to his chest. He had no idea how Willow would react when she discovered Drew was showing faint neurological responses. No idea if she had already prepared her next syringe or staged her next accident. But he knew this. If he waited even a day, it would be too late. He needed to find Sonny. He needed to find Laura. He needed to speak before Willow silenced someone else forever. As the elevator descended, Rocco felt the weight of destiny settling into place. He had overheard the darkest secret in Port Charles. And now the future of everyone Willow hated depended on him choosing to do the bravest thing he had ever done. Tell the truth before the next tragedy struck. Willow had always believed herself untouchably clever. Wrapped in the comfort of her flawless performance as the grieving wife, the compassionate mother, the model survivor, she thought her darkness was hidden behind soft whispers and trembling hands. But the moment she stepped out of Drew's room and noticed the faint shift in the air, the slightly ajar door, the distant echo of hurried footsteps, something in her sharpened like a blade. She paused her breath, slow and controlled, as her eyes drifted down the hallway. The hospital was quiet in that late hour, too quiet, and in the stillness she sensed it. She had been watched. She had not been alone with Drew after all. For the first time since her plan began, Willow felt the cold burn of exposure creeping into her bones. It took less than a minute for her mind to sift through the possibilities. And the same name kept rising like a stain. She couldn't scrub out Rocco. He had been wandering near the ward that night, He had been assigned community service. He had reason to be nearby, and crucially, he was young enough to move silently and curious enough to linger. A child, she thought bitterly, a naive, wide-eyed teenager playing hero in a world he didn't understand. And now he had heard something he was never meant to hear. Something that could destroy everything she had built. A hot tide of panic threatened to rise, but Willow forced it down, replacing it with the same icy precision that had guided her through every step of her vengeance. If Rocco had overheard her, he would not keep it to himself. He was too earnest, too stubborn, too much like his parents in all the ways that mattered. He would tell Sunny, and if Sunny ever learned the truth, Willow knew she would not survive long enough to defend herself. The only solution was swift, quiet, clean. She had eliminated threats before, and she could do it again. After all, removing Drew had been simple, a syringe, a trembling cry for help, a perfect mask of panic. If Rocco became a problem, she would handle him with the same efficiency. But this time, there could be no accidents, no medical explanations, no ambiguity. Children were unpredictable, prone to running, shouting, attracting attention. She needed something that would silence him immediately, permanently, and without leaving room for suspicion. As Willow began trailing the path, she imagined Rocco had taken the fluorescent lights overhead flickered, casting thin fractures of shadow across the floor, and for the first time she felt exhilaration rather than fear. Her heartbeat steadied into a cold, rhythmic thrum. She was in control again. She would not be outplayed by a boy. She reached the nurse's station and pretended to ask about visiting hours, but her eyes scanned every corner around her, trying to catch sight of a familiar mop of brown hair or a pair of nervous, shifting eyes. The hospital staff didn't notice her tension. They only saw the brave young woman struggling to hold herself together. After her husband's collapse, they didn't know the truth pulsing beneath her skin. Rocco was nowhere in sight, which meant he was moving quickly and likely heading straight to Sunny or Laura. Her window was shrinking. Willow turned down the back corridor, the one that looped toward the service elevators, thinking like a hunter now. He would avoid main hallways. He would avoid crowds. If he was scared, he would take the fastest exit. She could reach that exit first. She could wait for him. And once he appeared trembling and breathless, she would make sure his final thought was regret for ever crossing her path. But as she moved, something darker bloomed inside her, a feral instinct she had been suppressing for months. The truth was, she didn't just want to stop Rocco. She wanted him to feel the fear she felt every day she lived under Drew's shadow. Every day, she had to pretend gratitude toward people she despised. She wanted him to understand that she was not the fragile figure the world believed she was. She was the force shaping her own destiny. She was the architect of consequences. And anyone who threatened her future deserved what was coming. When she reached the end of the corridor, she paused, listening, really listening. A soft set of footsteps, quick and uneven, echoed from the stairwell nearby. Her lips curled into a faint smile. She slipped through the door without making a sound. Rocco was only one flight above her, gripping his phone, whispering Sunny's name in a shaky voice. Willow's blood surged. So, it was true. He had heard everything. He was already trying to expose her. She moved one step at a time, climbing the stairs in perfect silence, rehearsing the moment she would strike. Maybe a push would be enough. Maybe the fall itself would take care of the rest. Or she could yank him backward, clamp a hand over his mouth, and drag him into the basement level where no one patrolled at this hour. She had options, too many perhaps, and each one played through her mind like a beautifully orchestrated scene. As she reached the landing just below him, Rocco finally sensed her presence. He turned eyes wide, terror flooding his face, as though he were staring into the eyes of a monster he had only begun to comprehend. Willow saw the recognition, the realization, the understanding that she knew he knew, and something volcanic erupted inside her, a mixture of satisfaction and fury that electrified her from head to toe. "Rocco," she whispered, her voice soft enough to be mistaken for concern by anyone who didn't know her true nature. But Rocco was no longer fooled. He stumbled back, nearly dropping his phone, and Willow lunged. In that moment, everything changed. Every secret she had buried rose to the surface. Every mask she had worn shattered. Every threat she had made became real. She was no longer pretending. She was no longer careful. She was no longer human in the way the world understood. She was survival. She was vengeance. And Rocco, poor innocent Rocco, was in her way. The stairwell became a vortex of adrenaline, fear, and inevitability as Willow charged toward him. And both of them realized the same horrifying truth at the same time. Only one of them would walk out of there alive.